invite to the stage Dr. Teresa Cheng, who is going to be talking about our event today and our distinguished speakers. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone be here today and to join me with a celebration of Taiwan literature exhibitions, Reading Taiwan. And today is actually the second series of the author's talk in celebration of such a great exhibition we have it for this fall. And as a matter of fact, from September 22nd all the way through January 9th of 2026. That's amazing that in our district libraries that willing to work with us and having a great opportunity to showcase what we have in Taiwan. And with that being said, we also have the opportunity to actually showcase Taiwan books in terms of other authors' books and their translations. And we are so grateful to Director Eli Nyberger to join us today and also giving us an opportunity for the audience locally here, especially in Metro Ann Arbor area, to have opportunity to actually enjoy the Taiwanese books in Mandarin as well as the translations books. So it's such a great honor to be here today to join you to welcome Dr. Eli to give us a few words.
Thank you, Teresa. Thanks to you, everybody, for coming today. I'm Eli. I'm the director of the Ann Arbor District Library. Mitai has been such a wonderful partnership for us for many years, and each year they bring such wonderful experiences for our patrons, whether that is art or puppetry or dance or singing or performance, all kinds of things. And this year we are delighted, of course, as a library that they would be bringing literature. So I hope that you will all, when the event is over, check out on the second floor the exhibit Reading Taiwan. And my particular thanks both, of course, to our ongoing partnership with Mitai, but also to the Taipei Cultural Center in New York, as well as the National Museum of Taiwan Literature for helping making this exhibit happen and for bringing these books translated into English into our collection for you to check out and enjoy. And I also like to thank Professor Song for being here today. And that's it for me. So thank you very much. And I'm not sure what's happening next on the program, but whatever's next. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Eli. Oh, it's always been a great friend, so we don't go by the last name, we go by first name, right? So next, I would like to welcome TACO in Chicago, Deputy Director Jenny Chen to come up here to give us a few words. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. President of Mitai, Teresa Yang, and President of the Ann Arbor District Library, and State Representative Jason Morgan. Everyone, hello. On behalf of Director General Dennis Lay of Taipei Economic and Cultural Office, I would like to explain our greetings to everyone. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here at the Ann Arbor Library today. It's so bright, special, and has a very good, great environment. In May 2019, Taiwan became the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. So the lesbian theme today is also a new topic for me. So I think it will offer everyone a new perspective. So enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Next, I would like to do we have the, we have Director Gui from the Taipei Cultural Center in New York to give us video information. So that this is a welcome and is part of the books that have been donated from the office of his office in New York and representing Ministry of Culture.
Yeah. Hello, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the second event of the Taiwan Literature Exhibition, Reading Taiwan, here at the Ann Arbor District Library. On behalf of the Taipei Cultural Center in New York, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our partners, the National Museum of Taiwan Literature, MITAI, and of course, our gracious host, the Ann Arbor District Library, for making this collaboration possible. With the support of Taiwan's Ministry of Culture, this exhibition features 20 wonderful works of Taiwanese literature, shown in both their original Chinese versions and English translations. The books include novels, essays, picture books, covering a wide range of themes, from the White Terror and the indigenous stories to women's voices and LGBTQ experiences. Together, they show how diverse, open, and creative Taiwan's literature has become today. We are also very honored to host a series of talks that open windows into these stories and their cultural contexts. Today's lecture, From Notes of a Crocodile to Taiwan Travelogue, the shifting female homoerotic imaginary in contemporary literature from Taiwan, promises to be an inspiring exploration of how women writers and the translators have reshaped contemporary literary imagination. Here I thank you all for joining us this morning and for reading Taiwan with us. I hope you enjoy the talk and the exhibition. Again, thank you.
Next, I'm not going to read this whole literatures, and I know Principal Wang can pass it along with the National Museum of Taiwan Literature and of Director Chen's greeting words. So if you have some can pass along for everyone to enjoy it. And I would like to welcome our state representative, both state representative that come in early in the morning to join us on Sunday morning. And first, I would like to welcome Jason Morgan to come up here to give us a few words. You don't want to come up?
Sure. Thank you all so much. I did not know I was sharing a few words, so I will be just short and sweet. But just to say thank you so much to Teresa and all of you for being here. And whenever Teresa or Amy C2 call, we show up because they are wonderful community members who care deeply about what's happening in our area and do an amazing job sharing the cultural bridge here in Ann Arbor and our Taiwanese friends. So I am also very happy to share, I'm a co-chair of the Michigan Taiwan Friendship Caucus in the state legislature, a bipartisan caucus focused on building cultural connections and awareness and really bringing people together to support one another. I'm also one of our LGBTQ state legislators in Michigan, and so I appreciate the cultural exchange with our LGBTQ community as well. All around, this is a wonderful gathering with good friends, and very happy to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Great friends we are, so Next, I would like to welcome our state representative, Jennifer Collins, to come up.
I will just reiterate really what Jason said. We are in his district, but I am so happy to be here. I've been a writer my whole life. I was a journalist before I did this for 40 years. So I have such an appreciation for anything to do with books, anything to do with, I was actually a travel writer for a long time for the New York Times. So to be here and to learn more about these books and the Taiwanese culture is very exciting. And again, when anybody asks us, and particularly Amy and Teresa, we're very happy to come out and be here. So I really look forward to learning more today about the community and about these books and about Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you being here with us today. And I know that Jason need to leave earlier. Usually we have a photo session at the end of the talk. With today, I want to apologize. So if we could all come up here. Jenny, can you all come up? And our speakers. And also Mitai volunteers. Could you come up here as well? Volunteers. Board members? Are we looking good? Are we in the center or do we need to move?
Willow's saying this way.
Let's put a thumbs up. You mean, you want to have the background to tell what event this is now.
There we go.
Let's give a little thumbs up.
They're turning it back.
Oh. I would like to ask a favor if we could all move forward a little bit, one step here. Can everyone to join us? I so apologize for move everyone. It's a good morning exercise. Everyone to join us in the back. Everyone please. Thank you. We're streamlined, so we don't want to waste any time. Okay, thumbs up. Yay. Smile. That's Taiwan culture. One more. Thank you. With that being said, we are so honored to have Professor Sen here with us today. And she's a great friend of mine and also great friends of Asian community leaders. And actually, she's also a director from the Michigan State University and handling many things. And all the details, the introduction will be included in the link that Streamline later, well, Streamline now and later on the YouTube. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Professor Sen to come up here to give us a great show today. And before, after that, we will have a little reception. And before the reception, we would like to welcome everyone to come down to the second floor and to see the displays, as well to see if you like any books if you like to read in Chinese, there's available, and also if you like to see their translations, also available as well. So that being said, let's welcome, give a big round of applause to our professor.
Hello, good morning. I would like to thank Mitai, especially Mitai's president, Teresa Chang, and also the Ann Arbor District Library for inviting me. And my name is Tze-Lan, and I'm a professor of Chinese literature and film at Michigan State University. That's just down the street, right? So my talk today is titled From Notes of a Crocodile. Let's see, I'm trying to see if I can see it on this desktop. Okay. From Notes of a Crocodile to the Taiwan Travelogue, the shifting female homoerotic imaginary in contemporary literature from Taiwan. By the way, I just want to mention that because of the Reading Taiwan exhibition, my goal in this talk is to provide a general overview, but I would be very happy to discuss any of the books in more detail if you're interested. I also want to mention that Book Suite is present. They have brought the two books that I highlighted in my talk title today. So if you're interested in Notes of a Crocodile or the Taiwan Travelogue in the English versions, they do have the books available here. So first of all, let me talk about 同志 literature in Taiwan, Taiwan 同志文学. 同志 is a term that roughly is equivalent to queer or LGBTQ plus in English. It is a term that started to gain currency in Taiwan and elsewhere in the Sinosphere in the 1990s. And literally, it means comrade. So the Communist Party, in the Communist Party culture, you would call one another 同志, right, in the Mao era. But this term has since the 1990s been appropriated as a term to signify queer or LGBTQ individuals and communities. So if we look at queer literature in Taiwan, we can roughly divide it. We can roughly trace its development over several periods. The first is the so-called White Terror or martial law era, which lasted from 1949 until 1987. And then after the martial law was lifted in 1987, Taiwan's society as a whole entered a period of rapid democratization. All sorts of social movements arose, including the queer rights movement, a very strong feminist movement, and other social movements. And partly this is because the lifting of martial law allowed greater freedom of speech. In other words, during the martial law era, only a very small number of TV stations and newspapers were allowed to publish legally. But after the lifting of martial law, there was greater freedom to publish all sorts of things. Okay, so in the 1990s, the Taiwanese society witnessed the efflorescence of 同志 literature. And there are a number of contributing factors. One, the acceleration of globalization. In other words, there were all sorts of ideas and trends and cultural products that flowed into Taiwan. And there was also the influence of queer theory because in the Taiwanese Academy, literary critics, for example, and also social scientists, they began to be very interested in LGBTQ studies, and they were often working with queer theories that originated from elsewhere in the world, such as the United States. As I mentioned, the LGBTQ movement or the queer rights movement also arose during this period, and there was a very strong feminist movement, the general democratization, and also one more factor is that several prestigious literary prizes at this time awarded their top prizes to works of queer themes. So I think this had an effect of encouraging writers to further explore queer themes through their writing. Now, of course, if we cover this topic, we cannot neglect to mention the legalization of same-sex marriage in Taiwan. This was, realized in 2019. Before that, there was a very long process, very long struggle for the queer community's rights to marriage to be recognized and accepted by the Taiwanese society. Okay, so I wanted to just briefly mention some academic studies I have looked at to prepare for this talk. These are fairly established studies that scholars working in this field would be very familiar with. The first one I want to mention is Ji Dawei's 同志文学史台湾的发明, A Queer Invention in Taiwan, A History of 同志 Literature. This was published in Taipei in 2017. And I also wanted to highlight two books by Fran Martin. The first one is called Situating Sexualities, Queer Representation in Taiwanese Fiction, Film, and Public Culture. This was published in 2003. And her another book by Fran Martin is Backward Glances, Contemporary Chinese Literatures and the Female Homoerotic Imaginary, published in 2010. And I also put my book on this list. This is a book I published in 2003. It's called The Emerging Lesbian Female Same-Sex Desire in Modern China. This book is not entirely about Taiwan. However, one of the four major parts in this book is focused on post-martial law Taiwan. And I do have a whole chapter devoted to Notes of a Crocodile. Okay. So let me just give you some examples of queer literature from Taiwan, at least starting from the 1960s. Okay, so even before queer themes and issues sort of became in the spotlight of the Taiwanese media, even during the martial law era, there were already writers exploring queer themes. So, for example, the first gay full-length, by the way, there were a lot of works that touched on gay sexuality, but the first full-length gay novel in Taiwan was published in 1983. This was written by the famous Marxist writer Bai Xianyong, and there is an English translation titled Crystal Boys. But I want to point out that before this first full-length gay novel was published, there were already two full-length novels about lesbian lives and communities published in Taiwan, and both were written by women writers. So these works are not as well known as Crystal Boys for the public. I think most Taiwanese people know about Bai Xianyong and Bai Xianyong's work a little bit, but these two pioneering novels about lesbian lives and communities in Taiwan are not as well known. Okay, so the first one is Xuan Xiaofo's Outside the Circle. So this was published first in 1976 and then went through several reprintings with another press. And the book opens with this sentence: "There is a kind of love, lonely, arduous, and desolate. For a long, long time, it has been cast outside the circumference of the circle. A love forever doomed to tragedy." So it opens with this very pessimistic statement. And Ji Dawei, one of the critics I mentioned earlier, he points out that the circle hints at heteronormativity. In other words, the kind of social order that prioritizes heterosexuality, heterosexual relationships, the institution of marriage, things like that. Okay, so another pioneering novel written by a woman writer during this period is 两种以外的 Beyond Two Kinds. This was published in 1978, and it was later republished under a different title called 第三性, the third sex. So you can see that this writer, Guo Lianghui, she was drawing on the very common concept of the third sex made popular by early sexology, European sexology in the early 20th century. Okay, now let's go on to Bai Xianyong's 孽子. So this book is widely known to readers of Taiwanese literature, and it has, as I mentioned, it was published in English in 1993, translated by Howard Goldblatt. So I think that the Chinese title literally actually means sinful sons, and this book really highlights the tensions between young queer men and their fathers. The father figure in this novel is very problematic because the father is both very authoritarian and not very accepting toward the son's, the male protagonist's sexuality. So in other words, I think this book, in a way, sort of tells a story about sexuality, but also more generally touch on the repressive political environment and atmosphere during the White Terror era. Okay, now I could mention some more works. So here are some examples. For example, as early as 1961, there was a novel that was anti-communist, but there are two main male characters that are, they form a kind of sexual relationship, even though they also have a lot of relationships with women. Okay, so this, in other words, homosexuality was already explored in this very early text, anti-communist novel. And then in the 1960s and 70s, the woman writer Ouyang Tze, she published a short story collection, and several of these stories actually touched on same-sex desire, both desire between men and also desire between women. And then another example I want to give is Zhu Tianxin, this woman writer. She started writing at a very young age. The first book that made her very famous and popular is called 击壤歌, Singing and Drumming on the Ground. It is her reminiscence of her 3 years in studying in the most prestigious high school for women in Taipei. It's called the Taipei First Girls High School. It's a single-sex, all-female high school, and a lot of the relationships that she describes in 击壤歌 are very platonic, but also very intense emotionally. And she has written quite a few short stories and novellas that describe this kind of intense female friendship. Okay. All right, now I want to move on to the 1990s. As I said, this is the era where queer literature really started to flourish, and suddenly there are a lot of novels and short stories exploring queer themes. So the first text I want to mention is Zhu Tianwen's 荒人手记, Notes of a Desolate Man. This has also been translated into English. And even though Zhu Tianwen is supposedly a straight, woman, this book actually is about the life of a gay individual, okay? So a gay male individual. So when it was first published, it was both, welcomed and also somewhat controversial, because this was a moment in Taiwan where identity politics began to surface. So there was some discussion about whether she was speaking for the gay male community or not. But eventually, I think the gay male community and the larger queer community in Taiwan began to accept this work as one of the queer classics in Taiwanese literature. Okay, another work, a few other people I want to mention include, for example, Ji Da-wei, who is both a scholar but also a very fine fiction writer himself. And so, for example, his first short story collection, 感官世界, World of the Senses, as well as a short novel that he published, Membranes. These are both very important works. And I also want to mention that because there was a lot of interest in queer literature in Taiwanese society and in the Taiwanese literary circle during this time, some Chinese writers based outside Taiwan, they also started submitting their works to the literary competitions in Taiwan. So one example is Dong Kai-cheng, a very fine writer based in Hong Kong. His novella, Androgyny, was submitted to a very high-profile literary competition in Taiwan. I actually won an award. Okay, among women writers, I also want to highlight, for example, Chen Xue. Chen Xue's 恶女书, Book of Bad Women. This has also been translated into English, I believe. And this book actually consists of 4 very avant-garde short stories that explore women's desires for other women. And then there is a long novel called 师生画眉, The Muted Thrush by Lin Yan. This one of the most, one of the literary prizes in Taiwan, and the prize was 1 million NT dollars. So it was, quite a substantial prize. And then we also have Wu Jiwen writing about boys' love in the Fin de Siècle Boys' Love Reader, and also about transsexuality or transgender individuals in 天河缭乱, Galaxies in Ecstasy. So this list consists of both male and female writers working with a wide range of queer themes. Okay, now I want to zero in on the issue of the female homoerotic imaginary. I'm borrowing this term from a number of literary critics, and in particular, I'm using it in the sense that Frank Martin has elaborated on it. The term refers to the collective and cultural representations of romantic and erotic love between women in literature, media, and art. So in other words, the female homoerotic imaginary consists of all sorts of representations, and not only writers, but also artists and filmmakers and other people producing representations can contribute to this female homoerotic imaginary that is public and shared. Now, in her work, especially Backward Glances, published in 2010, Martin argues that the female homoerotic imaginary in contemporary Chinese societies is often characterized by a memorial mode where love between women is frequently depicted as a nostalgic, lost paradise from the past, implying a critique of the heterosexual expectations for adult women. What's more, the schoolgirl romance is central to the memorial mode. Okay. So in other words, in her work, she has really highlighted or centered her analysis on the so-called memorial mode and also the motif of the schoolgirl romance. Here are pictures of her two works, especially now I'm calling your attention to the one on the right, Backward Glances. Okay, now I myself in my work in 2003 also pointed out that it is quite common for female writers exploring same-sex relations to depict what I termed back then the female homoerotic school romance. In other words, relationships and intimacies between schoolgirls and sometimes also between female school teachers, and sometimes between a teacher and a student. Okay, so I've noticed that this has been a recurring motif in modern Chinese literature since the early 20th century. If we think about May 4th writers in the 1910s and 20s, we can, for example, look at the works by Lu Yin, Ding Ling, Yu Dafu, and others that revolve around the so-called female homoerotic school romance. So I acknowledge that. Okay, I'm one of the people who pointed this out. And I also agree with Frank Martin that the nostalgic memorial narrative is indeed very common in modern Chinese literature. However, in today's talk, I want to argue that it is time that we update our understanding of the female homoerotic imaginary in contemporary Chinese societies. Okay, so take Taiwan, for example. There has been a diversity of modes, if you will, in the female homoerotic imaginary. For instance, Da Wei Ji, or Ji Da Wei, in 2016 points out that the prevalence of the economic animal mode alongside the schoolgirl romance in Taiwanese literature about female same-sex desire. So what he means is that there are actually a lot of Taiwanese literary texts that explore relationships between adult women. Okay, usually these are more adult women who already have to think about their financial situation, and also sometimes these people, they are competing with one another for the attention of other attractive women, and so the economic factor becomes actually a central issue in the narratives that are presented. Okay, so I also want to point out that more recent literary developments also show a lot of pluralism and significant shifts. Okay, so here are the book covers of the academic studies I just mentioned. And so I want to point out that as early as Outside the Circle, 1976, and also Beyond Two Kinds, published in 1978, some Taiwanese writers were already focusing on adult women's relationships with other women rather than the schoolgirl romance. And these novels explore the tomboy femme or tangbao po subculture in 1970s Taiwan by depicting a community. In other words, in the text you will see multiple same-sex couples. They know one another. They seem to be on friendly terms. There is a community, okay, that the mainstream society may not be very well aware of, okay? So in these two texts, financial factors are often important in the relationships depicted. And I think that if we want to look at the modes and motifs in the Taiwanese female homoerotic imaginary, I can think of at least these other important motifs that are also quite common in Taiwanese literature about female same-sex desire. So, for example, narratives about personal journeys toward maturity, and the need to overcome internalized homophobia and also social intolerance. And often there are also narratives about how the characters or individuals, they process past trauma. And a lot of these narratives are about identity formation and the intersectionality of identities. And also, there is quite often an attempt to imagine queer lives that might have existed in the past, okay? And there are also narratives about the body, its senses, pleasures, ecstasy, and transformations. There are also stories and narratives about coming out, and there are, narratives about yearnings for long-lasting relationships or same-sex marriage. And finally, I want to point out many Taiwanese narratives. They entangle personal narratives and grand historical narratives because Taiwan is this place that has had a very complicated political history involving colonialism and an outside regime that relocated to Taiwan in 1949. So a lot of these narratives, even though they may look on the surface to be about individual lives and experiences, often you could also read them in a more allegorical way as comments on the political environment. Okay, so now I want to focus on one of the most iconic queer writers to have emerged in 1990s Taiwan, and her name is Qiu Miaojin. So Notes of a Crocodile was her first novel. On the left, you see the cover of the first edition of this novel. And then on the right, you see the cover of the English translation done by Bonnie Hui, published in 2017. So for those of you who don't know what this novel is about, here I would like to just point you to the blurb provided by the publisher NYRB on their website. First of all, the translation by Bonnie Hui won the 2018 Lucian Strike Asian Translation Prize. This novel is set in the post-martial law era of the late 1980s Taipei, and it is a coming-of-age story of queer misfits discovering love, friendship, and artistic affinity while hardly studying at Taiwan's most prestigious university. Told through the eyes of an anonymous lesbian narrator nicknamed La Tze, this cult classic is a postmodern pastiche of diaries, vignettes, mash notes, aphorisms, exegesis, and satire by an incisive prose stylist and major countercultural figure. Afflicted by her fatalistic attraction to Shui-Ling, an older woman, La Tze turns for support to a circle of friends that includes a rich kid turned criminal and his troubled, self-destructive gay lover, as well as a bored, mischievous overachiever and her alluring slacker artist girlfriend, illustrating a process of liberation from the strictures of gender through radical self-inquiry. Notes of a Crocodile is a poignant masterpiece of social defiance by a singular voice in contemporary Chinese literature. So when this novel was first published in Taiwan, I think Qiu Miaojin, she was basically one of the very first, if not the very first, female writer to openly come out as gay, and this novel was widely interpreted as semi-autobiographical. Okay, so why has Crocodile become a lesbian classic? Okay, I think that there are a number of reasons, and here I want to point out that it's because one of the reasons is precisely because this novel has moved beyond the schoolgirl romance. Okay, although the schoolgirl romance is described in novels such as the crush that La Tze had on Shui-Ling in high school and the intense romantic and erotic love between two younger women, Tun Tun and Zhirou, when the two were in high school. Ultimately, Notes of a Crocodile is centered on La Tze's life in college. So in other words, it's depicting a stage in her life where she's maturing and coming into her own as an artist and also as a independent adult. Okay, during her 4 years at National Taiwan University, La Tze overcomes internalized homophobia and comes to terms with her same-sex orientation and her physical desire for women. She grows from someone afraid to consummate love to someone who has physical relationships with women. It is a story about personal growth, maturation, and identity formation, despite the fact that the first-person narrator constantly calls the solidity or stability of identity into question. Melancholy, intense self-scrutiny, a debilitating tendency to hurt herself and her lovers, a defiance against society's irrationality, cruelty, and hypocrisy, and a wry sense of humor characterize the narrator protagonist in Crocodile. So in other words, the protagonist isn't always happy in the book. She's often depressed and actually going through very rough times. But despite that, I think a lot of readers have found this novel very resonant because it really shows the struggles that queer individuals have to deal with in a society that, back in the 1990s, early 90s, were not very understanding or were not very knowledgeable about queer life choices and, queer sexual orientations. Okay, so Qiu Miaojing published another book or another work. This was actually first serialized after she committed suicide, and then later on issued in a volume form, single book form at the end of 1995. It's called 蒙马特遗书, Last Words from Montmartre. And the English translation is done by Ari Henrich and also published by NYRB Classics. So Ari Henrich, who is not only a literary translator, but also a very established scholar in this field, she wrote a book chapter titled Begin Anywhere, Transgender and Transgenre Desire in Qiu Miaojing's Last Words from Montmartre. He argues that while previous studies have almost always characterized Qiu as a lesbian author, in Qiu's posthumously published Last Words, the body and its distinctions, whether gender or sexual orientation, along with genre codes, are subjected to constant and violent deconstruction. From Qiu's incessant self-scrutiny and experimentation emerges a transgender subject that does not settle, but rather rejoices in transmigration and inventive creation. So in other words, from the time that Qiu Miaojing wrote Notes of a Crocodile to the time that she was working on Last Words from Montmartre, Qiu had gained new insight into her own subjectivity. Okay. All right. Now, I want to just mention that Qiu Miaojing has had an enduring legacy on later Taiwanese writers, and the primary example I want to use here is Li Kotomi. She was born and raised in Taiwan, but she, after she finished college, she went to Japan to study and has since become a writer in Japanese. And her first novel, called Solo Dance, Hitori Mai, was a winner of the 60th Gunzo New Writers Award for Excellence. So this is a pretty prestigious literary prize in Japan for new writers, and as a result, she has gotten a lot of attention, and she has since published quite a few novels and short stories. So after the Japanese version was published first, she rewrote it or self-translated the novel into Chinese, and it was subsequently published in Taipei in 2019. And in interviews and also in in her essays, she has openly acknowledged Qiu Miaojing's Notes of a Crocodile as one of the major influences on her. Okay, so this novel, if you're interested, it describes a sense of alienation or alienation, both on account of sexuality and also on account of the fact that the protagonist is a Taiwanese person living in Japan and not entirely assimilated or integrated into the Japanese society. Okay. Okay, finally, I want to mention some recent developments, and you can see that at least one of these new developments, in other words, the writings about domestic life or same-sex marriage, this is partly, this development occurred because same-sex marriage was such a major topic in Taiwanese society in the 2010s. And so I want to mention at least two examples. The first writer I want to mention is Chen Xue. Chen Xue first burst on the literary scene in 1995 with her collection of short stories called 恶女书, Book of a Bad Woman or Book of Bad Women. So back then she only wrote very avant-garde, very radical type of fiction. But more recently, she has started to write about her domestic life. She has been married to a woman for over 10 years now. And so one of her collection of essays is called A Wife's Diary, published in 2012. And another work she has published, also a collection of essays, is called 10 Years Into Our 同婚, okay, same-sex marriage, We Live Quietly. Okay, published in 2019. Another trend that has emerged is the desire to queer Taiwanese history. In other words, to look at or re-examine Taiwan's history through a queer lens. So the primary example I want to mention here is Taiwan Travelogue, written by Yang Shuangzi, first published in Taipei in 2020. Okay, here are some pictures of Chen Xue and her spouse. And then here we see the book covers of the Chinese edition, Mandarin edition of Taiwan Travelogue, and also the English translation done by Linking. And in this picture on the right, on the left, on your left side, the woman in red, in the red dress is Linking, the translator, and the person on the on her left is Yang Shuangzi. Okay, now I don't know if everybody is familiar with this work, but let me just briefly tell you about the story. A young novelist, Aoyama Shizuko, okay, in 1938, has sailed from her home in Nagasaki, Japan, and arrived in Taiwan. She's been invited there by the Japanese government ruling the island, though she has no interest in their official banquets or imperialist agenda. Instead, Chizuko longs to experience real island life and to taste as much of its authentic cuisine as her famously monstrous appetite can bear. Soon, a Taiwanese woman who's younger even than she is and who shares the characters of her name is hired as her interpreter and makes her dream come true. The charming, erudite, meticulous Shizuru arranges Shizuko's travels all over the land of the South and also proves to be an exceptional cook. Over scenic train rides and braised pork rice, lively banter, and winter melon tea, Shizuko grows infatuated with her companion and intent on drawing her closer. But something causes Chizuru to keep her distance. It is only after a heartbreaking separation that Chizuko begins to grasp what the something is. Okay. So anyway, when this book was first published in Taiwan, it was actually marketed as not as a novel. So at first it was causing a lot of confusion, but now, after all the dust is settled, we are now familiar with the design of the book. It's disguised as a translation of a rediscovered text by a Japanese writer. And this novel was a sensation, its first publication in Mandarin Chinese in 2020, and won Taiwan's highest literary honor, the Golden Tripod Award. The Taiwan Travelogue unburies lost colonial histories and deftly reveals how power dynamics inflect our most intimate relationships. Okay, of course, the female characters in this book are, fictional, but there are a number of things that you could say that the writer unearthed or unburied. For example, the local food culture. She has done a lot of research on those things. Of course, because this is a fiction, there is always a blend between fiction and facts. Okay. So Taiwan Travelogue queers Taiwan's colonial period by reimagining how girls and women might have attracted one another and formed intimate bonds. Embedded in its narrative are a schoolgirl romance between two teenage girls, as well as the flirtatious interactions between Aoyama Chizuko and her interpreter, local guide Chizuru. Okay, so here I laid out the themes and structure of this novel, and I want to just mention or highlight the second one, colonialism and power. The novel subtly and not so subtly interrogates how Japanese imperial rule over Taiwan influenced language, identity, and interpersonal relations. Chizuko's position as a Japanese visitor sets up a dynamic of privilege, while Chizuru, though the local, often has to navigate the colonial structure. Okay, I also want to highlight the female friendship or love in this book. While the novel is about travel, food, and history, at its core is the relationship between two women navigating desire, misunderstanding, distance, and social and historical constraints. Okay, I think I will try to wrap up now because we are very close to running out of time. Maybe we're already out of time. So the female same-sex relationship in this novel can be read as an allegory of the relationship between Japan and Taiwan, marked by attraction as well as resistance, growing familiarity, as well as mismatched expectations. Under the structure of colonialism, the friendship or relationship can never be equal. Yet, some might still see Taiwan Travelogue as casting colonialism in a very rosy light by, describing the Japanese visitor to Taiwan as being very infatuated with Taiwanese customs and food. Okay, anyway, in conclusion, the female homoerotic imaginary in Taiwan continues to evolve. Literary writers have contributed compelling narratives and motifs that enrich this imaginary. Their writings have drawn on international literature, media, and art, but also found inspiration in local histories, traditions, and everyday practices. From Notes of a Crocodile to Taiwan Travelogue, we do not find a simple linear development, nor the replacement of one literary paradigm by another. Rather, we see the entanglement between literature and other media and the ever-increasing complexity of the female homoerotic imaginary in Taiwan. Thank you. I don't know if we have time for discussion. I don't know what the plans next are. Maybe we are supposed to move to the...
I think
okay.
we have time for a couple of questions. I will ask if someone has a question, please raise your hand and I will take the mic to you because we have folks who are listening into the live stream. So we want to make sure that they can hear the question that's being asked.
Hi. By knowing that in the Taiwan education system, these elite schools, the high schools, are mainly single-sex schools, versus like in the U.S., there are many co-ed. So would that single-sex school system, when these authors brought up under that education system, did that affect the current literature histories or affect these authors compared with the other countries?
I do think that the single-sex schools, they are maybe more prevalent in Taiwan than, say, the United States and some other countries. And yes, in a lot of these works, the characters, they may discover, they have special feelings for certain individuals, and, these people happen to be of the same sex, yes. But there are also a lot of stories that talk about how this is not a temporary stage or phase, because then, for example, the protagonist in Notes of a Crocodile, when she goes to the college environment, which is co-ed, she begins to, really, she's forced to really acknowledge her sexual orientation, because it's not a matter of being, in a single-sex environment. And she has to, confront some of the fears and phobias she has internalized from this very heteronormative society. And so, in other words, the book is actually telling us the schoolgirl romance is an important aspect of these individuals' experiences, but beyond that, there are relationships that they form with the same sex in their adulthood. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you so much. I concur with your conclusion about being too rosy in Taiwan Travelogue, because the author totally ignored the fact that Japan invaded China, Manchuria in 1931, had an all-out Second Sino-Japanese War on the 7th of July in 1937, and began the Nanjing Massacre in December 1937. And Taiwanese were conscripted to be interpreters or fight, and also indigenous people were conscripted to fight in Southeast Asia, and also Taiwanese women were conscripted to be comfort women as military sex prostitutes. Nothing happened in Taiwan Travelogue. It's like a peaceful paradise. Nothing to do with the theme we're talking about, but that's my take from the book.
I think early in the novel, Yang Shuangzi, she tries to set up the character, the Japanese woman writer, as someone who's not interested or not participating in the Japanese imperialist endeavor. But toward the end of the novel, of course, we see her local guide. I think her nickname for her is Chi-Chan. Yes. Chi-Chan actually talks back to her and says, you may think that you're not involved in imperialism, but no, our relationship can never be equal. And that's because you have, this position of privilege and access, and I don't. So I think, I think the book itself actually has a dialogue with itself about the nature of colonialism and power, unequal relations, those things. But I agree with you, it doesn't necessarily go into detail about historical events and the history of Japanese aggression, not only in Taiwan, but also in other parts of East Asia, yes. Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay, I did read both books, but I haven't read too many other books. So my question is that the first book, the Notes to the Crocodile, was written in the 90s. The book was written pretty dark, pretty sad, okay, versus the Taiwan Travelogue, more than 20 years later, that it's more pleasant, I guess, in a sense. Does that reflect by the style of writing in the different era of the Taiwanese authors, or it's just because of it's because of the individual, or it's because of the style of writing changing with time?
I think the times have changed because the queer rights movement first, you could say that it started in the early 1990s, and Chiu Miao-jing, she must have been aware of the gay rights movement, but she was not really a participant in the feminist movement or the lesbian activism, movement. She was more individualistic, and I think the sense of isolation and depression that she depicted, in the book, she dates it to the late 1980s, right? She first became a college student in 1988 or 89. So that was even more intolerant era because there was not a lot of open discussion about queer sexuality back then. So I think she accurately shows the sense of isolation and alienation that she felt in college. If we read this book as autobiographical or semi-autobiographical. Now for Yang Shangzi, who has, who's much, much younger and has, is openly married to a woman, and the social scene is completely different. There is now a lot more social acceptance of same-sex relationships and partnerships, and same-sex marriage has been legalized in 2019. So I think Yang Shangzi doesn't necessarily have to feel pessimistic about the future of same-sex relationships, the way that Chiu Miao-jing felt a lot, or the character Lazi felt a lot in Notes of a Crocodile. Yeah. So I think, yeah, definitely social change has contributed to the different tones of the two novels.
All right, well, thank you so much. Let's give our speaker another round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Invite everyone to come down to the second floor to see our exhibition. And then in about 10 minutes, we'll come back across the hallway here. We have a little receptions from the tea house and also from the local. And importantly, if you like to get some books, we have a book suite to your right. And if you want to grab some books, that would be great too. So if the rest of you would like to follow me, I guess, go down to the second floor. Once you come out with the elevator, is turn left and make a left again. Go all the way until you hit the wall. Oh, please don't hit the wall, okay? Thank you. I'll see you in a bit.